the worst call you could possibly get. You need to get to the hospital right away. Is my son alive? We cannot answer that. You just need to get to the hospital as soon as you can. John was driving on a street, a road, I guess a county road in Mechanicsburg, crossing an intersection, and was hit in the door by another driver. Both vehicles rolled over and ended up upside down in the ditch. We were told that he was not ejected from the car, but he had to be removed from the car through the back window. He had to be care flighted to Miami Valley Hospital.
The first time we heard about John was when our trauma pagers went off, and we found out that Care Flight was coming in with a Category 1 trauma from the scene.
Category 1 traumas are the sickest patients. John was a Category 1 trauma because he wasn't breathing on his own, because his blood pressure was low, and because of his head injury.
And the one thing that I kept wrapping my head around, other than, the big man upstairs and keep praying to him, was Johnny's a fighter. And if there's any chance of survival, he's going to grab it and he's going to run with it.
The ER is a fabulous place for receiving patients, evaluating patients, and stabilizing patients. But we knew that John was sick enough that he was going to need a lot of support over a longer period of time. So once his injuries had been evaluated and once we knew what kind of care he needed, we brought him up to our intensive care unit for monitoring and to take care of all of his injuries.
We started counting hours.
We started counting hours because they told us the first 24 hours were going to be like the most important. And once we hit that milestone, the next milestone would be 48 hours. And then the next milestone would be 72 hours. If he makes it past the first milestone, that's a reason to celebrate. Right. Second milestone, the same, 72 hours. Once we get through 72 hours, that's a good indication that we may be okay.
Unfortunately, at that point in time, it's still very early when you look at things globally. We don't know where he's going to end up and what his highest level of function is. And that's the hardest thing to counsel families on. It's, I know your kid's hurt. He's young. He has that going for him. All we can do is wait and see where he ends up. And that's a very hard thing to have to tell families. It's a very much harder thing for families to have to hear.
After John had been here for about 3 or 4 days, when we were able to send him down for a second study on the blood vessels in his neck, and we found out that the blood vessels in his neck were okay, meaning that the blood flow to his brain was okay, and the pressures in his head stayed okay at the same time, I got a lot more optimistic. That was the point at which I was sure he would survive. The trouble with an injury like John's, though, is that you never know how much function they're going to recover. And so my next big concern was that he wasn't as awake as we wanted him to be, and whether or not that was ever going to change.
I just kept telling myself, one step at a time. I said earlier, you kind of count the minutes and then you count the hours. And I just kept saying, John wasn't, he wouldn't give up, so I'm not going to give up either.
It just means that it was a day when everything changed. Before, my main goal was to get ready for the fall season. I was in the best shape I was ever in. Now it's recover from the accident.
Watching his family go through it has just been such a testimony to how strong those people are, and that their faith and their belief in their son, of how strong it was. and I've watched his sister basically never leave his side. I mean, she's been there every single time I've been, and she comes to football practice. She might sit up on the hill and leave him alone, but she's still there. And she's been right there through everything. Mom and Dad have just been some of the toughest people I've ever seen through this. I mean, it's been a brutal journey, but it's one that's been a journey of triumph at the same time.
Miami Valley saved John's life. Miami Valley enabled us to keep John around to see what comes next. If it were not for Miami Valley Hospital and their phenomenal staff, emergency department, care flight.
The EMTs here in Mechanicsburg, everything had to happen exactly the way it happened in order for John to survive. After John's accident, it was very critical that he needed care right away. So from the EMTs to care flight to Miami Valley, everything happened the way it had to happen in order for John to survive. I know when we were down there waiting to see John, it was hard for us, but when you hear what was going on, like when we took the tour down there, when we were actually down in the trauma room, in the level 1 trauma room, the girls were telling us, I mean, they said there was like 30-some people in there.
Yeah, they didn't. He went to the best place in the.
They saved his life. They're the reason why we still have John.
You just gotta keep your head down, keep grinding. It may seem bad, but it's like you're always gonna get better.